It's time for your Southern California Foreclosure Report. We just ran through the numbers and there's a big increase you need to see. The big question is, should we be worried about this increase? And we're going to give you that answer. Hey there, Christian Walsh, real estate agent with Wire Associates. We've been helping buyers and sellers and tenants and landlords make the best decisions in this crazy housing market. And it's time for another Southern California Foreclosure Report now that we just crunched the numbers for March of 2022. And make sure you stick around to the end where we're going to cover several different ways for you to track foreclosures. One quick piece of news before we dive into the numbers. The FHFA just announced in April that the foreclosure process must be suspended for those who have Fannie and Freddie backed loans. If the homeowner is applying for the housing assistance funds, those were distributed by the American Rescue Plan to the various states and local municipalities. Here in California, we have the Homeowners Assistance Fund, and they offer up to $80,000 for qualified households. And I've done a video on that. If a homeowner is in the foreclosure process and applies for those funds, the foreclosure process must stop for up to 60 days. Let's get started with the data. We're going to first dive into the notices of default, and here are the month-over-month numbers. Now, one of these months doesn't look like the other, and it's pretty easy to see we have a dramatic increase in the notices of default in March of 2022. So let's run through this real fast. We can see that in July of 2021, we see a spike in the number of notices of default. And the reason is that's when the foreclosure moratorium ended. Then things were moving along into September and October. Some folks started to come out of the forbearance programs. Those were over, and some did end up going into foreclosure. So we can see in August, September, October, into November, then the dip in December. Why do we have this dip in the notices of default in December? Well, that's typical. Around December, lenders will slow the foreclosure process. They're not going to start it off. And you can see that things picked back up in January. But what really the news here is March. March 2022, we see a dramatic increase. We're going to put this into perspective when we look at the year-over-year numbers, but this is a dramatic increase. Now looking at the notice of trustee sale. We can see what happened in July. We had that big spike. That was low-hanging fruit. These were notices of default filed before COVID or vacant properties. Then it was easy to go ahead and move forward with the notice of trustee sale in August. Dipped into the holidays a little bit, and then we saw the spike after the first of the year, but we don't have that big spike in March. Why is that? Well, this is because this is the second step in the foreclosure process. Remember, it's 120, 90, 21 days. So what's basically happened is we see that spike that happened in March for the first step. It'll be 90 days or more because the process doesn't always follow that exact calendar. It'll be 90 days or more before we start to see a dramatic increase theoretically in the notice of trustee sale. We're going to talk about later actually what we think will happen. You may not have a dramatic increase in the notice of trustee sale, but let's move on. Let's put these into context. And here we go, putting the notices of default into historical perspective. That's what you need to do because most of our month-over-month calendar, quite frankly, they couldn't foreclose. Now we're at the point where we can see how this looks historically, and you see the same thing I do. Look, things were moving along. There's a normal level of foreclosures in every given market. Then 2020 hit. That's when COVID hit. And we see 2021, the foreclosure moratoria were in place. So they weren't able to foreclose, and this is the few lenders who were able to still move forward with foreclosure during the pandemic, but things have rallied back. Now, if you average together 2021 and 2022, you'll end up with that baseline, but you can see the numbers are up. Now, let's put this into context even more. If we look at 2011, we see 2011 during the global financial crisis, there were a lot of notices of default being filed. We are at about half of where they were in 2011. Now, should we worry? Short answer is I don't think so, but we're going to keep tracking this, and that's why you need to be subscribed to this channel. So what's going to happen to these notices of default as we see these go up? Are all these folks going to end up in foreclosure? Short answer, in my opinion, is no. This could be the wake-up call for quite a few of these property owners. They most likely have equity. Over 90% of properties right now that are in a state of foreclosure have equity. So this could be the wake-up call to get these folks to list the property or to reach out to an iBuyer to get a cash offer to make the problem go away. So that's something to consider. While we're seeing an increase in the notice of default, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to go all the way through the process and end up coming out the other side as a bank-owned home. And here we are with our historical context for the notice of trustee sale. You can see that we're not at any sort of peak. We're still at low levels. And that is because this is the second phase. The spike we have in the notice of default may filter into the notice of trustee sale, but it could be another 90 days before we start to see this number go up. And don't forget that subscribers to the email newsletter, you'll be able to get these charts, and you can come in here and you can take a look at the data in a closer level. So make sure you subscribe. And of course, again, context, this shows you the notice of trustee sale levels in 2011. Now you can see, of course, that historically we're at much, much lower levels. This is important perspective, but again, something we need to keep watching to see if there are changes. And let's take a look at the real estate owned properties, the REOs. These are the ones that go back to the lender, and you can see the dramatic drop. 2015, those are actually what seems to be strong numbers, but you can see down here at the end, especially as you zoom in, there's some real small numbers. In all of Los Angeles, only 15 properties. Orange County has 0. No properties in March of 2022 in Orange County went back to the lender. And let's go ahead and put some perspective on this and look at these numbers. 829 properties in March of 2012 that went back to the lender. And March of 2012 was also the time that the market turned in Southern California and finally started to increase. That's when values started to go up and have pretty much been increasing ever since. That was around the bottom of the market. Looking back here at the numbers for 2022, these tiny, tiny numbers, another explanation for why these properties aren't going back to the bank is they're being purchased by others at trustee sale. So that we may see more properties actually get to the point where they go to trustee sale, but they're purchased by a third party, or they're purchased through the SB 1079 process. And make sure you watch that video. There are ways for owner occupants to actually reach out and buy these properties now in a unique fashion. My SB 1079 video explains. But it's very rare that these properties are going to make it all the way through the foreclosure process to the point where they're going to go back to the bank. There are a lot of times along the way where an investor can come along and make an offer and buy it, or the property can be put on the market and sold. One more important point, and we listed bank-owned homes during these crazy days. And don't forget, for example, the 829 homes that went back to the lender in March of 2012, they didn't immediately come to the market. They weren't immediately listed. That could be a several month process. It'd be assigned by the lender to an agent. The agent would go out and find out who's living there, if anyone. If there is a tenant there or an occupant there, then did you cash for keys? Or the bank would have to honor the lease if there was a lease in place. So it's still a long process for these properties to get to the market. But still, though, most of those actually ended up hitting the market and being sold the traditional route. Now, here in 2022, they're not even making it back to the lender to go those traditional routes because they're being sucked up before or right after the process through the SB 1079 process. So very different days. And certainly when you see this number, no wave of foreclosure. Now, if the notice of defaults continue to go up and those trickle into the notice of sale, and then ultimately they get to sale, we may see an increase. But based on the calendar, it's easy to say we're not getting any sort of wave of foreclosures anytime in 2022. We're going to have to wait until 2023 for that possibility. And we're going to have to see an even more dramatic uptick in the notices of default and notice of trustee sale. Here's 4 ways for you to track the foreclosure process. The first easy one is just hit the subscribe button and you'll get these monthly reports that we do. Another one is we have a link below that you can subscribe to where you will be emailed any short sales or bank-owned properties that hit the market in Southern California, and that includes single family and multifamily. Look for that link below. Number 3 is to sign up for our free weekly email newsletter so you get in your email inbox any news about foreclosures. And number 4 is we have a link below to sign up at foreclosure.com where you are able to track properties across the nation. We are going to release a video to show you how to use foreclosure.com as well as some of the other tools out there. If you found this video helpful, make sure you hit that like button. And you may have found it so good you may want to hit it twice, but once is all you need to do. You're missing out if you don't watch the next video in this playlist we have right here. Thanks for tuning in. This has been Christian Walsh, real estate agent with Wire Associates, and we want to hear from you.